to start recording here and welcome our guests, Erika and Michael, and I see some other great attendees here, so I'm sure we'll have a great conversation and discussion today. But I wanted to thank both of you for making time this morning. For you, Erika, I guess kind of midday there in New York now, but Michael getting to be the afternoon if you're back in Slovakia right now. So it's great to have you both here. And, really today, I wanted to bring on a couple of guests who have a lot of experience and sort of have done a lot of thinking and working with coffee retailers and coffee roasters, and both have kind of their own very unique experiences of bringing coffee into people's homes. Erika, through your work with trade, but also through a lot of the research that you've done. And Michael, with what I always thought was like the coolest magazine subscription out there that includes some great coffees from roasters that no matter where you are as a subscriber, they're roasters that you probably don't find in your backyard all that often. So I thought you would both just have some great perspectives on what this means for us, kind of operating in today's day and age where people are still drinking coffee, they're drinking it at home. I think expectations for coffee might be a little bit different in the time of COVID, but I also think that we stand to learn a lot, and that businesses who are adept and able to pivot and adapt to the changing times will probably come out of this stronger than ever. So I'm kind of, despite the difficulties that I know many people are feeling right now, I kind of long-term, I have some hope for everything. And I kind of wanted to start off just by giving you each a few minutes to talk a little bit about yourselves, just introduce yourselves, your experience, your companies. We'll kind of do that back to back, and then we'll turn over and I'll let you each speak a little bit about your businesses and your experiences in this realm before opening it up to Q&A. That seems to be a methodology that works well in these podcasts. So Erika, why don't you get us started? I did take the liberties of just pulling a little bit of information from what I know of both of your histories or things that you've sent me to put together a couple of slides, but this isn't a big presentational piece.
Thank you, Marcus. Thank you for asking me to be on this episode. I'm really pumped to be here and to share the things that I've learned. So thank you. Hi everyone. My name is Erika. I am 15 years into this whole coffee game. The first 4 were not in specialty. I worked as a barista in college at a decidedly second wave shop. But it was there that I actually fell in love with coffee. And then also, oddly enough, after, like 11 years of working in specialty, have kind of come back to that mentality that I had at that shop, which is that coffee is a great connector for many people for many reasons. And it's also a very personal experience. Like if you want to put anything in your cup of coffee, if you want to make it anyway, it's great. That's for you. But back to my history. Okay, so 15 years in, I've been a barista, head of QC, an educator, a trainer. I worked for an importer for a while. And then my last job was the director of coffee at Trade. And that's where I really learned a lot about consumer perception, coffee marketing, how to exist in the digital space as an e-commerce platform, and the language that we use to talk to customers. It was a great job. I had a year and a half, and now I am an independent contractor, and I work with a bunch of different companies. A lot of them, unfortunately, had to shutter because of COVID. But my main client is, excuse me, I'm so sorry, Harvest and Propina, which is an online marketplace. Harvest is the marketplace that's launching, and Propina is a 501c3 that funds farmers through weather insurance and creating bank accounts, which is cool. Like 5% of the sales from Harvest fund Propina, and that's cool. We can talk about that later. It's not launched yet, but it's, in my mind, it took like the supply chain and turned it into a circle, like the consumers actually like give back to the producers. And I'm just really pumped to be working with a company that has this sort of like ethical push But yeah, so that's me. Okay, sorry.
That's great. No, thanks for joining us so much. I'm pumped to have you on here too, Eric. I think we first met some years ago when you were kind of on the competition scene and I was on the head judge scene, and our paths crossed many times, but this might be the first time we've really had a good conversation. So
I
other
agree.
than by email and things, and I've followed your career and know that you've done some interesting work, and thank you.
Thank you.
So yeah, this kind of sums up what you said, right? I pulled that photo off your LinkedIn, which you sent me
Yep.
a better one, but I liked the idea of this sentiment so well that I wanted to be sure to include it
Hmm.
also.
Yeah,
And
no,
I'm sure we'll.
it's this is like what drives me, and this is what I sort of came to at Trade, is like I literally do believe this. This isn't just like some nice copy that I wrote up and just like shared with people. Like everyone's coffee is different, and that's great. You know, like we're gonna celebrate the 80 points, we're gonna celebrate the 88s. You like every coffee has a place to be celebrated.
No, that's awesome, and I really love this. I've often kind of used the shorthand of like surprising coffee in surprising places, and and I think I get just as jazzed of back in the day when you could go into like a hamburger joint in the Northwest and find Portland roasting, like a
Yeah.
single origin Papua New Guinea that was surprisingly good, and
Mhm.
it's awesome. And yeah, I always try to leave my clients and students with the idea too of, do you have something that my dad's going to want? My dad likes coffee. He's not a coffee nerd. He doesn't get it when I bring home geishas and Yemeni coffees. He appreciates it
Mhm.
intellectually, but he's always stoked when my wife, who works for Equator, brings the Equator blend. And
Yep.
so that's fantastic. And Michael, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, and we'll come back to more of Erica's story and philosophy. Then we'll give you the floor as well, Michael.
Sure. Thanks very much. I'm really glad to be here with you, Marcus and Erica. Good to see you over a virtual cup of coffee. Yeah, my story was much shorter so far. I've been in the coffee game for the last 5 years. I've never been a barista. I've never had proper training, so you probably wouldn't like to drink coffee made by me. But I do like to hang out in shops, and that's essentially where my coffee period of life started. I really like what you said, Erica, about the, the the importance of personal experience and coffee being this sort of a connector, because that's ultimately where it all started with Standard for me as well. That I fell in love with coffee, not just because of the taste, although I mean I needed to get caffeinated when I was at the university. So if the coffee's also tasty, like it was a really welcomed plus. But I really like the fact that coffee was always this social connector and this social stimulant. And I just really like to see what kind of all kinds of people being in coffee shops, like people of different ages, people of different cultures. It was such a diverse and inclusive community that I really wanted to find my way in to that community. But I also knew that I probably can't be as good baristas as you are, because I didn't have enough training, and I knew that there are much better people in the world in that than I could ever be. I couldn't start roasting because naturally starting a roasting business is a significant investment. So I was looking for ways how I can contribute to the industry. So at the same time, I like to read high quality print magazines like New Yorker, Monocle, The Atlantic. And I just didn't see this kind of a magazine, this kind of a publication in the specialty coffee industry. So that was when the idea of Standards began to crystallize, to bring this beauty and this diversity of the coffee community and all its aspects and all its topics into one physical product that I could feel, that I could give to a friend, that I could give to my mom to convince her to start drinking specialty coffee, which I succeeded with, by the way, and I'm really proud of that. So yeah, that's thanks. That's and my grandma as well. That was a harder battle, but it worked out in the end.
Yeah, well,
So yeah, that was the idea in the beginning, to bring this diversity of the coffee community and all its stories, all its aspects into one beautiful print product. And that's when Standart was born. So that had been my preoccupation for the last 5 years, and I'm really glad to meet such incredible people like you are, and publish interviews with incredible baristas like Erika, for example.
cool. No, thank you. And I know, you had some experience before Standart, right? As like organizing community events, I think like a coffee festival in Central Europe and working with the TED or some TEDx events. Is that right, Michael?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I was really into events when I was like 17, 18. I somehow got the TEDx license to organize some events in Central Europe, in Slovakia, and it was great fun. Like, I got to meet people from Google, from Apple, like really interesting people. And I wanted to translate this kind of a preference in meeting with communities in physical spaces at events and beautiful venues into coffee. So we started to do coffee festivals in Austria, in Prague, and in Slovakia as well. So yeah.
Yeah, very cool. Well, yeah, as we kind of get more into the specifics of Standart and how your subscription works, I am very curious because I think, as you know, from working with so many cafe owners too, what that process was like, because you really did take like sort of live events, as you just said, and kind of distributed them more broadly, gave people some tools to enjoy things in the comforts of their own homes. So I think we have a lot to learn from that. So thank you.
Likewise.
But Erika, can you talk just a bit about, I just picked this slide. This is kind of the slide for you to talk to, but you can go off on any topic you like. But I think your presentation at last year's Expo was so eye-opening. And if you can talk a little bit about that presentation, share a little bit about just your perspective of getting good coffee into the hands of people. And we have a lot of roasters that are tuning in and that will listen to this offline. So let's try to give them some tools to thrive.
Love it. Drop the link to this presentation in the chat, because I have a Google Drive folder with all of the slides and a video of the entire presentation. So,
okay.
But this was essentially, this presentation meant a lot to me because I felt like I was sharing something with the specialty coffee community that was like a secret. And like I had the key and I just started banging this drum, and I'm still banging it. But essentially, to like condense everything down very shortly, customers want dark roasts and they want coffees that taste like coffee. Like that's the too long didn't read version of this. But yeah, specialty has been considering itself to be this like precious object for a very long time. And, we've been teaching ourselves that like 88, 87 and up coffees are the only way that this industry will survive. They're the best coffees. Everyone should enjoy these coffees and like them. But what we don't realize when we say things like that is we're speaking within an echo chamber. We're not actually talking to our customers when we talk about wanting 88-point coffees and like something like a coffee that doesn't taste like coffee, like you mentioned a Papua New Guinean before. And I love Papua New Guinean coffees because they're weird. Sometimes they're terrible. Sometimes they're amazing. But they have a very distinct profile. And I've found out through talking with customers and engaging that that's actually something that they don't want most of the time. A lot of people who drink coffee want coffee that tastes like coffee. And it's esoteric and it means something different to everybody. But our biggest seller when I was at Trade, back up a little bit. When I was at Trade, I created something called Taste Types, which is a 2-word system to categorize coffees. So we had roasty and smoky. Those are coffees pushed to second crack. Comforting and rich, like medium to medium dark, you know, things that people could hear and kind of understand the general gist of the coffee that they were getting. So the two biggest taste types that we sold were comforting and rich, which is medium dark, sweet and smooth, which is a medium blend, I guess 3, and then third is roasty and smoky, which is coffee pushed to second crack. And I was honestly really surprised by that at first. I thought that people subscribing to a specialty coffee site would want the really difficult, like Yirgachefs and stuff like that. But then I got involved with speaking to the customers. Like customer service would like giggle, they'd get like a weird call or a weird email, and they'd always be like, Erika, look at this. And so this is my favorite story to tell. I've told it 1,000 times. I tell it in this presentation. So if you watch that later, you'll hear it again. But I talked to this one woman who was really upset because Trade's whole thing was freshness. It was like the coffee's only roasted when you order it. And it like arrived in 4 days, but she was so mad that her coffee beans didn't have oil on them, because oily coffee means fresh coffee. So I like asked her, I like reached out to her and I was like, hey, I'm the director of coffee. I'm so sorry you were upset. I would love to talk to you about your experience if you have time. She was gracious enough to give me some minutes. And she said that like the beans aren't fresh because there isn't oil on them. So I asked her, why does oil mean freshness? And she was like, well, you put oil on the beans before you roast them. And it made me realize that like people don't even understand what roasting coffee is. Like they think it's like roasting vegetables, you know, like it's a bean. So why don't we roast it that way? She was so awesome. By the end of the conversation, you know, I was able to explain. I was like, do you mind if I explain roasting to you and what oil means and all that? And she was like, yeah, sure. So it was in that moment that I really, really, really realized that our customers don't know what the hell we're talking about. We use words, have expectations, and we just put a lot on them. It's like, well, what, you don't like this? Well, you don't like good stuff, or you can't understand it. And it's like, they just want a coffee, man. They just want a coffee that tastes good.
For many years, Erica, I've always thought that like coffee people would do themselves a huge favor to look at craft brewing, maybe even more so than wine, which is the parallel that I think is made most frequently, because, you know, I know a lot of brewers. I've worked with brewers as a coffee roaster, and but there's a certain humility to folks that brew beer, and I can't think of any beer folks that don't realize that there's a time and a place for like a Pabst Blue Ribbon or a Coors, right? And,
totally.
and we haven't quite gotten there yet, right?
Yeah, no, not at all.
So
not at all.
Yeah, so I think
an 80-point coffee could be your Pabst Blue Ribbon, and sometimes that's what you want, right?
Yeah.
Sometimes I just want a coffee that tastes like coffee. Like I want a diet that I can put milk and sugar in and not think about it, you know?
Yep. 100%.
So why would I think that my experience is elevated or above different than my customer's experience, you know?
Yep. No, I think that's so telling. We at the San Francisco Coffee Festival, Boot Coffee had a booth. It was kind of, we rarely go to these consumer things, so it was really awesome for us, because here's, you know, thousands of people that are paying $25 to I think $85 to come to this event to drink coffee, just the public. And we thought, you know, we're educators, let's do something kind of fun. Let's brew like, and just have 2 pots of coffee sitting there. This was like our informal version of all of the data that I'm sure you were able to collect through the trade platform. You know, sophisticated coffee drinkers, people putting the money where their mouth is in the Bay Area. And we were brewing Willem's La Mula Geisha, or we were brewing geishas from Geisha Village, a farm that we're involved with and work very closely with. And in the other pot, we had like a low 80s Brazil, you know, like 82, 83, chocolatey, nutty, like sweet, clean, not super dynamic, not a lot of sort of distinct acidity. And we would just serve blind cups of each and just ask people 2 questions, right? Like, which do you prefer and which do you think is more expensive, which was kind of our stand-in for quality.
Yes.
And across the board, people at this event wanted the Brazil.
Ha ha ha! Proofs in the pudding.
Of course, there are some exceptions, and it's not that those coffees were, that the Lamulas and the Geisha Village are phenomenal. They were great coffees. Like, of course, that's where we were really winning sort of our audience as trainers, was all of the coffee companies that were exhibiting there. So it was a win that they loved the high-end coffees. But it was so telling for us. It was really telling for someone Michael might know, my colleague Valerian, who was one of the owners of Green Plantation in Slovakia. But he also has this company, Unleashed Coffee, in the Bay Area with a Brazilian farmer. They co-own it 50-50. And it was that Unleashed Coffee. And it was like this also kind of aha moment, I think, for all of us, even though we kind of suspected that. So
yeah, it's really amazing when you do something like that. I mean, as a barista of under this, because I was serving coffee and I knew what we're asking for, but actually having a little test, and then that shows you, and the data that I got, it's amazing what happens when you actually listen to the people that are buying the thing that we're selling.
Yep, 100%.
Which is wild.
And I've got a great comment in here from my good friend Elise, who owns Go Coffee Go, which I'm sure as a trade competitor, and I love what they do. And I was lucky enough when I worked for Batdorf and Bronson to get to know Elise quite well. And she's like, a lot of people believe oil means fresh and no oil means old and stale. And she has this great story about just how we describe coffees on our labels, which is they called to complain that they didn't want tobacco in their coffee because that was listed as a flavor note on the bag, right? So.
Yep, that's another thing. Flavor notes. It's like, oh, is this covered in caramel? Is this is there fruits in here? Customers, it's not like they're simple people, but we take it way too far. And it's fine, because with some high-end wines and stuff like that, there's an echelon for that, for sure. But for the majority of people that drink our coffee, they don't need these things. They don't know what elevation means in terms of why the coffee tastes the way that it does. So why are we putting that on the bag?
Right.
Why are we putting producers on the bag when the coffee was bought through an importer? We keep trying to do things to prove that we're top quality, when honestly, we just need to make a good product.
Yep.
So.
Yeah, I know Oliver Strand wrote quite a bit about that and spoke about that at a conference that I helped organize, that he attended as a speaker, about how wine kind of has these shortcuts for describing itself because it's been around thousands of years. The way that we think about coffee is doesn't quite align with that yet. Maybe we don't, we haven't sort of brought our customers along to that point yet, or it is such a common, ubiquitous comfort that maybe it'll never get there, but it's good that we're kind of wrestling with this. And Mbula is also chiming in that she's just on here listening, and these sentiments are very similar to the ones she holds, which is great. And I think, the more you go in this, as you become Q graders, like many of us are, and teach students and kind of work in the marketplace, I think we do kind of find that we really do see the value in those coffees that are, kind of broader at the bottom of that quality pyramid. Not the bottom, we're still talking specialty coffees, they're hard coffees.
Yeah, well, I really love how you use the word value, because this is not my sentiment, this is Charles Babinski's, so I will definitely, anytime I say it, I'm going to give him props. In wine, wine just values all of it, from the the $8 bottle of wine to the $100 bottle of wine. It's valued no matter what it is, because there's someone out there that wants that. And if we could think of coffee that way, the financial value of an 88-point coffee is greater than the financial value of an 80-point coffee. But we've still asked these producers to put so much work in. We're, evaluating it. We're figuring out where it goes. And we penalize our producers for not having infrastructure or the soil or like the manpower or any of the things to make an 88 point coffee. So we don't pay them for it. And the thing about it is just so messed up because like so many customers want like an 80 to 85 and they're easier to grow and we don't have to put that pressure on our producers for this.
Right.
You know, like we don't need to throw yeast at them and like have all these experimental processes. Like if they have the infrastructure to do that, that's awesome.
So so taking that sentiment, how do you think roasters can respond to that? Like the specialty roasters, right? The folks that are on the call, the folks that we've both worked with and for, what would sort of be a takeaway for them with that kind of a mindset?
So we've spent so long learning how to roast coffee to an underdevelopment and call it light roast and celebrate it. Oof, what a spicy take. But thank you, Michael. Why don't we take that same energy and apply it to dark roast and below 85 point coffees? Like there's stuff that we can learn here. We can learn how to create a super delicious dark roast. And trust me, they're out there. I've tasted them. And we can learn how to make a super delicious below 85 point coffee. Trust me, I've tasted them. It can happen. Blends are really popular with people that don't work in specialty. So figuring out like your blend like strategy is another way to like apply it to learning and getting new customers. It's just, there's an arrogance in saying like what we do is best, so you should love it. I've been listening to customers for so long that I'm now at the point where it makes more sense to me to be able to be like, cool, you like dark roast? I'm gonna like pull out caramel in a dark roast, you know? So that's my challenge to coffee people.
Thank you. And I want to bring Michael into this conversation now, and
Please.
And then I'll kind of have us all unmuted here in a little bit because I do want to think about from both of your experiences with subscriptions and what roasters can do to kind of either with technical tools or with these ideas of the types of coffees they're offering to be more responsive to what their customers are interested in. So, Michael, you're unmuted. Perfect.
Yep. I mean, you made so many great points, and I made plenty of notes. And I really liked what you spoke about the role of value in specialty, and perhaps the definition of the word. I don't want to go too deep into semantics, but what I see a difference is between talking to the customers and speaking with the customers. I see a huge difference between talking to someone and speaking with someone. And I know this from the other side. Like I've never worked in a bar. We did run some pop-up fun events, but I've never worked in a bar. So I was always on the consumer side. And I personally had this feeling that I wasn't, in many cases, in some of the specialty shops, especially in 2015, 2016, when the coffee fascism was still cool. I often didn't feel that I'm really in a hospitality establishment. I just thought I'm in this sort of a lab where it's great that I have this perfectly crafted beverage for $6.99. Like it's great. Like I'm happy to pay the extra for the added value and that it's a direct trade and so on and so forth. But I often felt, well, first of all, mistreated, or like the barista or the staff in the shop didn't really care about me and my preferences. Like they only cared about the beverage, the perfect shot, the perfect filter, which is fine. But I mean, at the end of the day, the customer is the one who pays the money. So this is something where, as a coffee industry, we can learn a lot from wine, from craft beer, or from cocktail industry. Like we are all in hospitality business first and the foremost, and then we are in coffee business. So yeah, this is something we also want to communicate in Standart. Like both with the business model, with subscription, also with the content. Like, we don't want to be talking to the readers and like showing them like the geekiest experimental processing methods, or some sort of new roasters that are popping up somewhere with like this particular new machine. Like, that's exciting and interesting for a part of the audience, but for a person that we want to bring into the community, so it's not just just a bunch of cool kids from the block clapping on our shoulders, like, oh, like, look how great specialty coffee industry is. We need to bring more people in to appreciate good coffee. So the selection of the content and the way how the business model works with these direct subscription is also one of the ways how we want to engage more with the audience and speak with them rather than talking to them.
Can you talk a little bit about your audience? How much of your audience is kind of just a coffee drinker, coffee consumer versus somebody who's in the industry and in the business?
It's majority are people that are in the business, that are whether baristas or roasters. The second group are the coffee enthusiasts, like people that, as I was a couple years back. So those two groups, like coffee professionals and coffee enthusiasts, those are the two biggest groups. But then what we see rising right now is also a group of people that have never been really into coffee, never worked in coffee industry, but they are getting into this lifestyle kind of because coffee is not alcohol, and you see this trend of low alcoholic drinks or alcohol-free movement. So coffee is something very neutral. Also culturally, like, we have a lot of customers in Middle East, so coffee is something that's really the social connector, and it will never insult anyone. So we see this rise of people in readership that are, for example, like business people or travelers. We started, well, before the outbreak last year, we started working with American Airlines, with British Airways, or with Lufthansa to bring some magazines into lounges at airports, to bring in new people and new voices and new insights into the industry. So I would say the professionals, number one, the second biggest group, the homebrewers, and the third group are people in business, in maybe art, that want to get into the coffee drinking community, and Standart is something that represents this community quite well.
Right. And how, as far as the growth of Standart and the subscription specifically, I'm curious about what was the decision to offer a bag of coffee along with the magazine, and then what has that kind of growth been like? How do they support one another? How do you think about them sort of coexisting in a box when somebody gets their order?
Right.
And third, like, how do you know, what's the process for you selecting the coffees that go in?
Yeah, that's a great question, Marcus. So the original idea is essentially connected to this sense of hospitality. Like, when you walk into your favorite coffee shop, or when you walk into a new coffee shop, there is this experience you live through the moment you walk in, the moment you are served coffee. And we wanted to bring this unique experience, this sort of a quarterly ritual to our readers. Like, as a subscriber, you look for receiving a new copy of Standart once a quarter, and you know it'll come with a bag of coffee. You often don't even know what coffee that will be, so it will be this nice little surprise. So it's this small ritual you're looking for, and this whole experience of getting the envelope, opening up the envelope, smelling the magazines, taking out the small bag of coffee with it, and this physical experience. It's something we thought it's really important, especially if if it's connected to our core product, which is the print magazine.
Right.
And also it smells nicely, like when the small bag is inside. And
Perfect.
we also thought it's a win-win for us, also for the roasters, and also for the readers, because we do work with roasters from all around the world. Like we, as a publication, like we cover global topics. We interview with people of all backgrounds, all cultures. So we want to be really inclusive and really global. So every year we work mainly with one or two UK European roasters, one from the Americas, and one from Asia or Australia. So that there must be this balance.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, so far the feedback has been great, and it's always, especially now when people are stuck at home, and the atmosphere is quite dire during this outbreak period. It's really heartwarming to see stories on Instagram, like people taking shots of the magazine and the bag of coffee that came in, and like being really happy that like something that came in from a warehouse in Berlin came to their home. Yeah. And it's this short but really nice personal connection that we have with the reader that I really like.
Cool. I absolutely want to come back to this idea of sort of hospitality and crafting this experience like in a box. But first, I just have kind of a nuts and bolts, like really pragmatic question, which is like shipping, right? How do you manage the logistics of a magazine, coffee that's coming from anywhere in the world, and then subscriptions that are going out in boxes everywhere to the world? It hurts my head to think about it, Michael. So I want to hear how you solved for that.
Wow, well, that's a big one. It's been something we were building ourselves over the last couple of years, like this whole logistical part of Standart. We have our two biggest warehouses are in Berlin and in Tokyo. And we work with a number of shipping companies that help us with fulfillment.
Great.
It's not easy, especially when shipping to South America or Middle East, especially when we have subscribers there. Like often case the envelopes, the shipments with small bags of coffee they just get stuck at the customs because you can't import coffee to that country. Or on the custom papers we have the word magazine, but magazine in English also means the thing you're sticking into your rifle that carries bullets. So sometimes we get these strange questions from some countries like, oh, so are the contents of the boxes really magazines?
Yeah.
So there's a lot of
these coffee to a client in Saudi Arabia, and yeah, you have one typo on your on an invoice, and the whole thing gets kicked back, and it's months later. But
oh yeah, that's exactly right.
Wow.
So yeah, I don't think there is a real silver bullet or shortcut like how to tackle global logistics with a product like this. Yeah, it's been really just experiment, trying what companies to work with, if FedEx or DHL, but I mean, we are grateful that we are surrounded with people that do this for a living, like the companies we work with. So we are just getting a lot of advice from them.
Yeah, perfect. And I just heard from Elise at Go Coffee Go in the chat window too, and she mentioned that like nothing's getting into Saudi right now, right? So that's a whole other challenge that we're facing today. But I'm curious, Erika. Oh, she just stepped away for a second. I just unmuted you. Did trade deal with any international borders, or is Harvest planning to?
So trade did not deal with international borders, and Harvest definitely is. Harvest is going to be featuring coffee is roasted by roasters at origin
Mm-hmm.
and then sent up to various roasters for packing and shipping. And I'm luckily, I've never been in charge of logistics or ops or any of that, but I've been next to it a lot. And yeah, I mean, the amount of meetings that trade had with USPS to like get the rate down were immense. Like
Mm-hmm.
it was almost constantly, like every week, you know? So we live in a world where people expect things that they buy to show up like the next day. So it's really difficult to like mitigate customer experience and also like get the roaster to roast and then ship it out. And yeah, customer service, I think, mostly had to deal with like slow shipping times, but what trade did to combat that was send out emails at every step. Like once the roaster confirmed, like we send an email like your coffee's roasting. Once it was shipped, we would send an email with the tracking number. So there was a lot of hands-on work that needed to be done to satisfy the customers. But yeah, it's a nightmare. I'm so sorry, Michael. So sorry you have to deal with that. Oh my God.
Yeah, no, and that was a question that I wanted to ask, because, I know a lot of our clients and students, we have a Boot Coffee alumni portal, and often we'll see like, all right, we're setting up our website for mail order. How do you all manage this? And and I know that there's no single answer, but just hearing that you all kept talking with your shippers about trying to get a favorable rate, and Michael, that you're always sort of evaluating the logistics options, that's really helpful, I think, to hear that even a very well-funded and well-capitalized company like Trade ran into these challenges as well. And that, Michael, you've been at this a while now, and it doesn't sound like it's any easier. It's just a fact of doing business right now.
I'm honestly curious how the this shipping landscape will change after the outbreak is gone, because I think it's been a big reality check for many big or small businesses that deal with that work in DTC and direct to consumer industry.
Mm-hmm.
And well, we see the rise of e-commerce. I don't remember the most recent percentages of growth in Shopify stock or Amazon stock of the last couple of weeks, but it's been insane. And not sure about the States, but in Europe and in Asia, where our two biggest warehouses are, like when the outbreak came, like it was madness. The first couple of days, like everyone was just so overwhelmed and overrun with orders that it's essentially paralyzed the postal industry.
Yeah,
so I think there will be we'll see a lot of revolution in streamlining these processes and optimizing these shipping processes.
Yep.
Which hopefully turn out as a positive for everyone involved.
Right. Well,
including the customer.
Here we're facing threats from our executive branch of our government to shut down the post office. So who the heck knows what's going to happen there? I know, of course, none of us want to see that happen. But I am interested, because I think both of your companies do this idea that I mentioned I wanted to come back to, of kind of crafting the customer experience, providing hospitality, even though there isn't that sort of personal touch of a cafe. And I want to make sure to sort of think about this from the perspective of the entire experience of the customer, right? What's it like, at the end of that, when you finally get your box and you open it, how special does that feel? How does that carry the identity and the idea of hospitality through? But also, how does it start just with the website experience or the marketing experience, drawing people in? And I think in the middle, Erika, you sort of mentioned already those constant emails, keeping people abreast. But I would just love to hear about both your philosophies towards that and some recommendations you would have for roasters to maintain their identity all the way into the customer's hand.
Yeah, I would love to start. This is something that I've been working with Harvest, the new marketplace about to be launching, about. And it's the idea that
we lost
so many baristas and say, oh, Am I back?
You're
Can you
back.
hear me?
Let's, yeah,
Okay.
go for it.
Told you, my internet is terrible. I'm so sorry about that. But a lot of people go to coffee shops because they want that interaction with their barista. They enjoy that experience. And a lot of baristas stay baristas because they also enjoy that experience. So one of the things that I've been telling my clients and just people that I know is like creating a digital presence is really important, but you have to own your individuality. Like you really have to like stay local and like think about your community, think about how you interact with people, think about what it is that you provide, right? And see how much of that you can shift into a digital space. And I know everyone's making brew guides these days, but you know what? There are a ton of people who've never seen a single one. So if you are a coffee shop, a roaster, you own a brick and mortar, get your baristas to make some brew guides. You know, like customers actually do want that experience. They want to feel like they're being brought in and they're being taught something and, you know, like they know more because their favorite barista told them.
Oh, that's
And
great.
it's really,
You're saying this as I can hear Devora, my wife who works for Equator, in our kitchen, pre-grinding coffee for her brew guide on fresh brewed iced coffee, which is going to go on the Equator Instagram live at like 10 o'clock. So I'm living this reality multiple times a week in my home.
that's awesome. Oh, and that's what it is. Like as we're quarantined and we're separated, like we have to continually put out content for people. It's a way to stay connected, doing lives, doing things like this where you can take chats and questions and all that stuff. Like the paradigm has shifted. Like we're not going to coffee shops anymore. We're making coffee at home. So we have to still be the barista that makes you feel like you're in a cafe. Which is tough. It's really tough. It's more emotional labor, which is what baristas always have to like put out for nothing. But yeah, it's just staying present online, and like your followers will follow you. They'll unfollow you when they don't want to, but just being there, I think, is really important.
Cool. No, that's great. And Michael, how about for you all? Because I know how special those packages feel when I get them, but I also know your website does such a nice job and you engage in other ways as well. I've keyed this Instagram post up, which I think is part of that.
Yeah, I think it's very important to think about this customer journey, maybe from software design perspective, like as sort of a UX, like a user experience. Like when you're designing a website or when you're designing an app, you're thinking of the UX, like what do you want the customer to do? How do you want the customer or the user of the app feel? What might be the roadblocks that they could face? So doing good coffee shop business or running a good coffee equipment website is like there you also need to consider UX very, very significantly. Like where do you want to lead the customer? So this UX perspective and the importance of customer journey is something that we value at Standart highly. Like there is still a lot of work that we need to do, and like how quickly we can solve some of the shipping problems that we discussed, or a bunch of other things. We just rolled out with a new website. We are running out with a new design next month. So there is still a lot of work in progress, and we are a small and very young team, so we are still learning a lot. But the way how you treat, how you respond to customers or readers posts on Instagram, the way how you respond to people's messages, that's in a way that's also marketing. Like that's your face in front of those people. Like marketing is not just how your Instagram posts look like. It's everything you do. It's all of these different touch points, and you never really know, especially now on the online, who's on the other side. Like it happened to us many times that we had some really angry customer because a shipment was not delivered, or because they needed to pay a high customs fee or something. But at the first glance, it looked like, oh, okay, this is just some really angry dude that's having a bad day, and like he's swearing a lot in the email. But we kept our head cool, like we really show that we care. We did solve the problem, and in a few weeks, it ended up being like that person ended up talking to another person in the company he worked in, and that company became one of our long-term partners that we worked with for the last 3 or 4 years. So you never know who's on the other side. And the most, not just ethically the best way, but the most productive way is to literally to treat everyone the same and treat everyone the best, because you never know.
I love
So
that.
it's not just a question. So it's of course the question of morale or company values and ethics, but it's also a question of productivity. It's efficient. It's effective.
Yeah, no, and I love that. Like the way that you described that going down is it's almost like a page out of a customer service training that you would deliver to a barista or to a wait staff somewhere, right? Where if somebody's coming at you and they're angry, that's an opportunity, right? You're getting this free feedback from someone, and it doesn't matter, I guess, if you're in a cafe or behind a computer screen. Be responsive, be open-minded, listen to them, be humble enough to think about learning, and you'll probably convert them to your biggest champ. So
that's exactly right. And what you spoke about the importance of hospitality and what values you have in regards to hospitality. One value we hold quite deeply is this under promise, over deliver, which we can also kind of connect with the conversation you had about flavor notes, Erika and Marcus. That if you communicate this new coffee to the person that walked into your shop, and you tell the person that, oh, you'll have notes of jasmine, ginkgo, and yellow coconut curry and something, you put their expectations so high that when they get home, or even when they drink the coffee at your shop, and even if it's done perfectly fine, 99% of those people will never taste jasmine inside. They will feel that the coffee is good. They will consider it tasty, but you often just disappoint them. And
I love that. When we're working with brands to help them identify flavor notes or things in our lab, we have some folks in our office, admin type roles, or working with equipment, that I love for them to come into the tastings with us and to give them, kind of a tasting form with some basic flavor notes that they just have to check off, and go through that process a few times so that we're accurate on that, because it's true. You don't want to, be it flavor notes or be it information about, I think Ruth Church back here commented that, processing methods, you put honey processed coffee and people wonder where the honey is.
Yeah.
Well, that's the oil, right?
Perfect.
Roasted with honey. Sounds pretty tasty.
My favorite, just recall my favorite experience with these flavor notes. It was one overheard conversation. It might have been at the Boston SCA Expo or somewhere in a shop. It's when a barista was explaining to someone flavor notes of a particular coffee, and he was saying that you won't taste raspberries in dark chocolate. You will taste dark chocolate with raspberries inside. I was like, Jesus Christ.
Wow.
No, that's awesome.
You gotta be kidding me.
That's cool. Well, that's awesome. We've covered a lot of ground, you guys. This is great.
This has been a great conversation. I love it.
I wonder, just kind of in our last few minutes here, if I can put each of you a little bit on the spot and
of course.
say, if someone were looking at launching their website, their subscription service for like their roasting company, because so many of our attendees are roasters, what would be like the little bit of secret sauce that you'd want to share? What would be that fairy dust that they should make sure they have a little bit of to at least make it work?
So invest in your website. I know it sounds weird, but make it look good, make it look professional, make it look more than a Shopify site. you can use Shopify, that's totally fine. But also speak to your people, like use clear words that describe what it is that you want to do, with kindness. Like that's pretty much what we do in the shop anyway. So you can translate that online to the digital space. Also make sure the images of the coffee that you're selling are clean, like white backdrop, use a softbox, do whatever you need to do to get good product shots. Because if you're just like, if it's like a dingy photo of a bag on like an iPhone, not gonna cut it. Customers want to see something. Oh, I'm coming to it. Match the customer's expectation with the content you put out.
Awesome. Thank you. Perfect. Michael, what do you have to add to this picture? Oh, you're muted.
Oh, sorry. I lost you because of my crappy internet. What'd you say?
Oh, no worries. I was just asking
I
Michael
was just
for
saying that
his
I
perspective.
lost you for 2 minutes because I had a very millennial problem with my Bluetooth headphones. Battery went dead. But yeah, the question was, what would be the advice if someone wants to start e-commerce or online shop?
Yeah, or, you know, just, I mean, you to bring that hospitality to the experience, just to kind of think about a takeaway for someone right here.
Yeah, I really love the actually the last part that I did here from Erika, that you should match the expectations of the people that are coming to your website. If we need to talk in practical terms and more technically, maybe a piece of advice would be to look at options that are already out there and pre-built, rather than like try to code and come up with your own super sophisticated methods of communicating your brand or your company online. Like, yeah, like Shopify is a great example of a perfect tool that'll fit the needs of 99% people that just want to sell their coffee online. If it's maybe a voucher for like 10 drinks for your customers, or if you're a roaster and you need to sell bags. I think Shopify and many of the apps that you can use there just do the work just fine.
Yep, and they have subscription options and
they have subscription options. Yeah,
perfect. And then just we had a great question come through the chat to me privately, but maybe you can each sort of wrap us up with the thoughts about how much choice do you give customers when you're presenting options of subscriptions?
Oh.
Michael, you offer one, right? You get the magazine and a bag of coffee that we pick every quarter, but
that's a tough one. We actually invested a lot of time into rethinking the value propositions of Standart, and we are running out with a facelift for the occasion of the redesign of the magazine next month.
Okay.
I think the general rule is the less options you give, the better, because it's a paradox of choice. Like if you walk into a shop and the barista offers you like 8 different filter coffees and God knows how many blends or something, it's just when you have too many options, you often just pick one or just get intimidated and you walk away. So the fewer options, I just think it's better. And speaking from the business and marketing perspective, I think it's more effective to do a lot of A/B testing. And if you do want to try different subscription options or different value propositions, instead of like putting them all out there, it's better if you do A/B testing. Like, to some customers you show this option, to some customers you show this option, and then you can evaluate the results and see which works better.
Great. Yeah, thank you. And thanks for mentioning one of my favorite books is The Paradox of Choice by Barry Schwartz.
Oh, yeah.
So, perfect. Erika, anything to wrap us up on?
No, I mean, Michael hit like a lot of really good points.
Great.
I'm going to co-sign everything that he said. And I think that your mission statement as your own business is a way to communicate to people. And like too many options definitely throws people off. Keep it simple. At Trade, we had like a dark roast subscription and like a choose your own adventure subscription. But you know, your customers, if they're gonna subscribe to you, they're gonna do it because they like what you want. And maybe if they want the same thing over and over again, you can offer like the house blend through and through, you know, or like the same sort of coffee.
Mhm.
But I mean, they like you, they trust you, they want to drink your coffee. So just own it. Just be happy with the fact that you're putting up a subscription, but do keep it simple, like Michael said.
That's awesome. Thank you both for that. We one of the courses that we've launched online is a roasting business fundamentals course for business people starting roasting, and some of our students were on this call. But I think that idea of kind of knowing your knowing who you are, having that unique value proposition, that elevator pitch, that really strong identity is where it all starts. So great advice. Thank you both for joining our conversation. And Eric, I saw you posted a link to your presentation in the chat.
Yes.
So everybody should grab it there. Willem is thanking you as well. I just want to point out some upcoming topics for coming weeks. Next week, we're going to hear updates from producers and others that we work with in Colombia on our boot coffee consulting work program, Coffee for Peace. The following week, which dovetails perfectly with this topic, is we're going to bring in some sort of non-coffee people, but that understand coffee, some graphic designers, branding experts that really understand how to build these e-commerce pieces. Because I think, as you said, Erika, it's, you know, you may know coffee, but at least the way that I heard your comment, if you would make all of this investment in a beautiful cafe that's kind of iconic to your brand, why wouldn't you take the same steps with the designer, with the web architect to do the same? So We've got some cool topics coming. You guys were great. I hope everybody, as Willem says, I like your saying, Erika, cosign. As Willem says, he wishes everyone a successful week. I wish you all a successful week as well. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, Erika. Thank you, Marcus.
Ciao. Bye-bye.
Thanks, everyone. Have a great week.
Yes, you too. Bye, y'all.